Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Wednesday live stream, which sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. As you can see, I'm dressed for the season. I hope this all finds you well and doing whatever you need to do at this time of the year. We didn't have a show on Monday night because I was really busy doing lots and lots of different things. But of course, the world of politics and sort of insanity carries on without me. So a warm welcome to you. I can see we're on Getter, we're on X, we're on Rumble, we are on YouTube. We're even on YouTube. Hello, all my YouTube friends out there. By the way, good to see you. Hi, Chris Davies. I see you there. Yeah, I've decided to venture, very sort of gently, very gingerly onto YouTube. But I think the topic we're talking about tonight is going to be safe enough. So yes, hi Chaz, good to see you, and Jean. Yes, Jean Wallace, very nice to see you. I'm glad YouTube have sent you the link. I mean, they normally completely censor me. I don't know. I'm hated by YouTube, but never mind. I can cope with that. And yeah, I see all you YouTubers there. So listen, there's so much stuff we can talk about. But really, before we get to that, I want to just give you a gentle reminder of something which is happening at the end of January, and that is our next live show, which is on screen now, which is an evening with Mr. Ben Habib and my friend Baroness Kate Hoey. And also my friend Eileen Quinton, by the way. There's going to be three people. And that's all about the future of the United Kingdom. And tickets are now available at davidvance.net. Go along if you can, buy a ticket, come along and see us. There's so much stuff in the news at the moment about reform and about the Conservatives and Labour and all of that. And no better man to talk about that and what it might mean than Ben Habib, who, of course, was, I think, previously deputy leader of Reform. He's now left Reform, but there's so much to talk about. But Kate Hoey, I'm sure you know Kate Hoey, one of the few people who were in from a Labour background. She's now non-aligned in the House of Lords, which I can understand. And Eileen Quinton, who some of you may or may not know. Hi, Melanie, by the way, nice to see you there. Eileen, rather, her mum was murdered by the IRA at the Poppy Day bombing at the Cenotaph in 1987. So some very powerful voices. It should be good entertainment. And yes, Melanie, Ben is a great guy. And, we need more people of his ilk. But there's lots of things to talk about. I mean, okay, so we can move on. The tickets, davidvance.net. Check it out over there. Right. Also moving on, just to say that even in the past couple of days, there's stuff. I'm really delighted with our special guest who's sitting there very patiently as I waffle here, but he's very good with this. But there's a few things that obviously you've all seen the news about the whole malarkey with the WASPy women and how they're being treated. So I maybe want to touch on that with our guest as well, this WASPy women. I also want to talk a little bit about, the whole Elon Musk and reform link. I don't know what it is exactly, but we want to chat about that as well. But most of all, this is a celebratory stream because tonight, or maybe you're going to be sad because we're going to talk about one of our best friends, and that is, of course, Humza Yousaf, who, has tragically announced his departure, only from politics. I thought hopefully he would be leaving the UK. Maybe he plans to do so because I know he loves Gaza, but our special guest is going to tell us all about that. So listen, he's been sitting here very patiently in the background. I had the pleasure of him joining us back at the end of July at our live event in London. And so it's very apt that we kind of start to wrap up the year really with the return of the formidable David Scott from Scotland. Hi, David.
Hello, David. It's a real pleasure to be back and to see you again, and on such an auspicious occasion as well.
No.
It's been a good year in many ways. Not in every way, but in some ways. And this is just a little bit of icing on the cake.
Well, it is, and you know, sometimes we there you I see your fans are already commenting favorably, David. Just like that, David Scott was my favorite on UK column, says Ibersteller, and mine as well. But things change, and we all move along, and you know, David, there's so many troublesome things can impact in politics, and so many serious topics we could talk about. And there's just two of those I wanted to, as is always my way, you know, I ramble a bit. What do you, this waspy women thing interests me because it seems to me that these women who were born between 1950 and 1960, basically that decade, I think they have been let down at least. That's putting it mildly, by the government, and yet Labour's very happy to sell them out. Tories didn't do anything for them. And Reform, Richard Tice, the remarkable Richard Tice, he said also, sorry, nothing we can do about it. What's your take, David, just broadly on the Wall Street?
I've got two lines on this. I find this, like you, very interesting. And I haven't really looked at the case to get all of the angles on it, but there's two things I'd like to raise. Firstly, when you're looking at pensions generally, it's a Ponzi scheme, right? There is no pot of money. We simply pay in and pay for the last generation, and it's all done on how much you can trust the government. They can guarantee they will pay you something, but they won't be able to guarantee the purchasing power of that. It's going to end badly for everybody, I think. Yep. I think the idea where there'll be a comfortable retirement is increasingly going to be a thing of the past. When the pensions were first introduced, very few people collected them, and collected them for a very short time, even when they did. And as life expectancy has expanded, and also more and more the expectation or the desire, or maybe even the physical ability to work has reduced, the pension periods become greater and greater, which makes it, generally speaking, unaffordable through coercive taxation. So there's a big problem. But basically, it's a Ponzi scheme, and I think a lot of us are going to be very disappointed. Now, the other aspect of this is the male v female aspect of it, because we as a society made particular provision for women, and they were given certain protections and certain advantages and certain benefits simply because they're women. And I'm okay with that. I think that was a good thing. I think that was the right thing to do. But of course, you then had feminism. They said, "Oh no! We want all the responsibilities, all the rights of men," without realizing that if you get that, you also get all the duties and responsibilities of men. And with the rough comes the smooth. And as a little bit of me looks at this and thinks, well, this has been generated by discrimination law, right? And I don't actually support that law. I think men and women are different. I think we should make special provision for women, and I don't have a problem with doing so. But having lost that argument on a society-wide basis, at least for now, and having the uniformity of equality ruling the roost, it's very difficult to see where any protection for women come. And not even when you get to the trans issue, where we're now no longer able to define a woman, but where we get to, well, okay, it's time to go and die in a trench somewhere defending the country, or it's time to get down in the sewer and clean the fatberg out of the London sewer, right? Who's going to be doing that? Well, those sorts of jobs are done by men. How long before that's no longer acceptable on the grounds of discrimination? Because it starts off where women saying, well, we want equal representation at board level and in parliamentary level and in academia and at senior levels of the law. Okay, but it isn't going to stop there, right? Because once you've opened that box, once you've said what we need is equal distribution between the sexes everywhere, because anything else shows manifest unfairness and an intrinsically sexist society. How long before some guys decide, well, we're going to sue the government because we're having to deal with the fatberg and there's no women down here and life is unfair? because that's the victim mindset that's being promoted. So there's a lot about this that leaves me feeling somewhat I'm somewhat divided in how I view this. Although for sure the women paid into a scheme, they thought they were getting certain benefits, and then those benefits were removed.
Yeah, but you're right in the fundamental. Pensions are a Ponzi scheme, and I don't. But most people don't understand that. And I, over the years, have had many discussions. It's generational as well. But a lot of people think that what they're paying in for is for their old age. They don't get the fact, David, that they're paying it in, and it's being taken and splashed up against the wall in Ukraine, or it's being, or on a myriad of current expenditure. So,
Yes.
it is a con, and you're right. And I see Melanie here says on the stream, by the time she retires, there won't be a state pension. I mean, that's well, I would like that. I would like there not to be a state pension, but don't you dare charge me or take national insurance contribution from me. I would take that deal. Would you?
Well, yes, but what happens if you're like 70 and you've put in your national contributions all your life? And you do. I mean, it is breach of contract. It's just it's breach of contract with the state. The state will change the rules, right? And there'll always be a reason for them basically pulling a fast one. Ultimately, right? We as a society have made a bargain with the state that we will not make the difficult decisions. We will not look after ourselves. We will not look after one another. We will not look after our health. We will not look after our own people. You do it, right? And we should not have done that because the state cannot be trusted.
No, but I mean, as somebody says in the stream here, one of the issues is even it's not so much the removal or the changing of the pension retirement date. It's the fact that Labour in particular couldn't have been more hypocritical about it, David. I mean, there's video footage of all of them, from Stormer all the way down, saying, listen, we are 100% behind you, Waspies. And now, today they've turned around and basically said, off you go. I mean, that's, I think, what's annoyed a lot of people as well. It's a duplicity.
Yeah, it's very cynical. I mean, Starmer lacks the human touch to make his betrayal seem plausible. Right? It's just no. Right? He's too much of a robot to get away with that. Other politicians might do better as they betray you and steal from you and gather your support and then put you down badly. Because that's not a unique Labour characteristic. That's quite broad spectrum across the political world. But this one's been particularly blunt and there's not even much of an expression of regret. It's just no.
And the final thing about it is, for me, it's like, there's a hypocrisy on it. But the same Labour government, I mean, these people are now, by definition, they are pensioners by definition. And at their youngest, they're in their mid-60s. They could be in their mid-70s, right? Roughly. Yeah. So these are the same people that they've taken away the winter fuel allowance from. In England, anyway. I'm not sure what the position is in Scotland, but
which they also promised they wouldn't do. Starmer went on and said this is terrible.
So I mean, honestly, I'll tell you, David, as you said, you and I, we met last at a very agreeable meeting in London back in July, and just at that point, Labour had just won the general election, and it was that kind of, I don't know, honeymoon period, and it ended so fast with the killing of the 3 young girls in Southport about 2 days after our event. And since then, it's just been like, my goodness, the amount of duplicity and betrayal is just off the scale for me. And I didn't expect Labour to be so bad so quick. Did you?
It has surprised even me. I'm pretty cynical about politicians in general and left-wing politicians in particular.
Yeah.
And I've never liked the Labour Party because I've always found they have a totalitarian streak, which I find objectionable. So I wasn't hoping for much, but Southport shocked me, and it not simply the event, right? The event was bad enough. It was the lies and the cover-up. And then the turning on the people who were who were distressed and concerned, and labeling them as everything evil, and the whole, we're going to turn on a portion of a society, and then we're going to use the legal system, we're going to use the law, we're going to use the police to nail to the wall anybody who dares speak. And then we're going to use trickery, because it's not enough that we've got all the police and all the courts and all the power and all the guns. No, we're going to use trickery. So we're going to say to these people who we're going to lift for often extremely minor events, minor actions, we're going to say to them, look, you're in big trouble here. If you plead guilty and throw yourself on the mercy of the court, that's the best thing, because you're going down anyway. There's no doubt you're absolutely bang to rights. You're going down, and people are out for blood here, and you're going to get it in the neck. But if you throw yourself on the mercy of the court, that's the best thing you can do. So people pled guilty, and then they found themselves with enormous prison sentences for essentially nothing. Yeah. Now, I've seen this trick pulled many times in Scotland before. People, if you're out there, if you listen to this, there's one thing you learn from tonight's podcast. If you're lifted for something, don't plead guilty. When the lawyer comes and says to you, and he will, right, you don't stand a chance. You must plead guilty. It's the best thing. My legal advice to you is to plead guilty, because it's the best thing you can do in order to get out of jail time or serve as little as possible. That is a lie. He is not there to help you. He is lying to you. Do not believe him. Stand up and defend yourself. I've seen it over and over and over again. Innocent people plead guilty all the time, because the process builds up pressure, and the pressure is unrelenting, and psychological pressure goes on for month after month after month, and people crack. Just make it stop, make it go away. Yeah. This is the system we've got, and it's horrible. And that was rolled in. So within weeks of Labour coming in, we saw everything that was dirty about the state that we live under. And don't confuse this with Britain or the British, right? We are not our government. They are not us. Right, the state is something else. It's becoming increasingly toxic. And we saw it at its worst in a very intense period. And then we had all the things regarding Tommy Robinson, who, the time we were down there, had a gathering in the middle of London, which was extremely friendly.
Very good. It was, yeah.
Right, which was very positive, quite a Christian influence. It was extremely varied. The only thing that identified these people was that they identified as British. There was every colour, there was every age, and it was very harmonious. It was a very positive event. Don't think the police thought it was that. I spoke to a chief policeman. They seemed to have a different idea, but I was there, and it was a very positive event. And then that was then demonized by the Starmers of the world. So there's this disconnect between the people and reality, and how people actually interact with one another, and the ordinary men and women in Britain, and what the state is pushing and saying and insisting is true. And this break between reality and the political narrative is very dangerous. And it was there with the Conservatives as well, but it was shambolic, and it wasn't so focused. And I didn't feel it was so dangerous, because there was still some amount of voices being raised against it. But as soon as Labour came in, it seemed to take on a more sinister hue.
Yeah, it certainly has. And in fact, actually, even as we speak this evening, the trial of the alleged suspect, there was a court case involving him. He didn't attend it, obviously, except via video link. He's in Belmarsh, and remarkably, he didn't plead. He didn't plead. He just silence, and therefore that's taken as a plea of not guilty. I understand legally, but it's very strange, David. It's very, very disturbing, the direction in which we're going. I think we're living in an autocratic technocracy with all lashings of totalitarianism, and we ain't seen nothing yet. But There's always good news. There's always good news, and even in the worst kind of moments. And the good news came yesterday, I think it was, and that's why I got in contact with you, because when we spoke at the beginning of the year, we were talking about issues concerning the SNP in Scotland and some of the changes that have been happening there. And back in, I think it was the end of April, or the leader of the SNP, that mighty man, Humza Yousaf, he stepped down. And now it transpires, David, and I'm sure your heart was broken when the news arrived, that he's written saying that he is stepping down entirely from the body politic and not standing in 2026, which I think is your Scottish elections. So,
next election, yeah.
How did you take that news? Were you surprised?
I was a little. He's not really got anywhere to go, and his reputation isn't great. Both he and Nicola Sturgeon set up private companies, right? Humza Yousaf Limited, right? Nicola Sturgeon Limited, this sort of thing, as a way of getting income outside their normal political activities and not paying marginal rates of personal income taxation on it, because they're a limited company, they'll pay corporation tax rates.
I didn't know that. Yeah. Yeah.
Right now, this people did point out that these were the very people who were going on about, we just want you to pay a little bit. We're just asking. Notice people who are asking, who are taking the tax off you on the basis that if you don't pay, we'll lock you up or shoot you in the head. They're always just asking. We're just asking for you to pay a little more. Just pay your fair share. So this stuff, right? But all of a sudden, when they came to pay their fair share, they wanted to minimize their tax liability. Imagine that. So there was obviously something going on. Yeah. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if Nicola packs it in quite soon, but she's still under investigation, so she's got a slightly different calculation to make. So Humza said he was leaving, and to be honest, I was glad, because he's not been good news. I've got his letter of resignation here to John Swinney. It's a Dear John letter. It's not great. It's got one of my pet hates is people who write to you and start off the letter with "I am writing," because it's the one thing you can see that they're writing, because it's a letter. So he starts off, "I am writing to inform you as party leader," as though John Swinney doesn't know that, of my decision to stand down as an MSP in 2026. He then said, his next words, "I struggle to find the words." I mean, this is a man who's meant to be ministerial level. This is how he starts his letters. It's a bit embarrassing. So he goes on about all the on and da. Right, and then immediately, third paragraph, we're into Humza's sweet spot. "There is no way this son of immigrants could have ever dreamt of being the leader of his country when he was a boy. People who looked like me and who were of my faith simply were not represented on the front benches in politics anywhere in the UK." Okay, so he's playing the race card right away. Okay, even in his resignation letter. And he goes on playing it a bit more, right? And he then goes on about his ministerial roles and how, during my time in government, including as First Minister, I've always been driven by my desire to improve the lives of the poorest and most vulnerable in our society. That is cultural Marxism. That's what he's pushing there, right? That's neo-Marxism. We're dividing people into groups. We're going to find the people who are disadvantaged, and they need the state to step in their behalf and rob other people and give them freebies, because that's what they need, right? I think that's fundamentally not true, but there we go. He said, "This will guide me whatever I do next." Right, and he goes on about, he tries to find things he's done well in government, and these are quite small, right? He's not able to point to anything particularly. He agreed to pardon minors convicted in 1984. I mean, it's fairly thin pickings in terms of stuff. And he says, "As well as important domestic matters, I've always believed Scotland should be a good global citizen." What does that mean? Scotland collectively should be a good global citizen. That's weird. That means collectively we should be behaving as a single hive mind. And doing something that is whatever global citizenship means. So that's not defined by Scotland, that's defined by the UN. contributing to help solve the biggest challenges humanity faces, as well as standing in solidarity with those suffering grave injustices across the world. As First Minister, I hope I was able to demonstrate leadership during what I saw as the moral question of our time, the ongoing atrocities and war crimes being committed in Gaza. Notice it's not the killing of 18,000 tiny Scots in the womb every year, and in abortion. Was it 10 million people and 10 million children in Britain killed? That's not the moral question. No. It's a war. I'm not calling it a war, but it's a war. So he then goes on, I'm going to continue to do this, and he'll give John his unwavering support. So that was his letter of resignation. Goodbye, Humza. So we thought, David, you and I, we might do a short Humza tribute, a short retrospective of his political.
Absolutely. Let's let it roll, David. The man, the myth, the Muslim.
The man, the myth, the Muslim. Now, I have to apologise to the Scottish Family Party and Richard Lucas, because I ripped that one off. That's his title. He gave a speech that I was at. I was in the audience, man, the myth, the Muslim, and I thought I like that. I'm stealing that. So if Richard's watching, sorry, but it was your idea, and I'm more than happy to acknowledge it.
Yeah. Some things are so good, David, you got to copy them.
Right. So he was born 1985, son of Muslim immigrants, and he went to posh public school, a private school in Glasgow, Hutchinson's Grammar, and he then went to Glasgow University where he studied politics. So he's a 21st century postmodern politician. He's never done anything, right? He's never had a proper job in his puff. He went from studying politics to working for an NGO. He worked for a Muslim charity, and the Muslim charity is Islamic Relief, NGO Islamic Relief.
Oh yeah.
And he wasn't even he was a media spokesman. So he was media spokesman for a non-governmental organization, right? So this is not hard graft. And he went from there to assisting SNP, to being selected for the SNP to Parliament. So he's never done anything. Although, if you look into the actions of that NGO and where some of the money went, there are questions to answer, but that's not one for today. So he then became transport minister. Very quickly, within a couple of years, he was a minister. So, he memorably got caught for driving without insurance. Right? So this is where the Humza as joke, Humza as punchline really started. When he got sworn in, he turned up dressed in a Pakistani jacket and a kilt. And it all looked a bit odd. He swore into Parliament in Urdu, so he was always making a big thing of his difference, of his Muslimness, of his otherness. Right? I'm a member of a minority. I require special consideration. This was always pushed. So even before the driving without insurance, as transport minister, there was a bit of the comedy value about him. But yes. Driving without insurance as transport minister was his first great achievement.
What was his explanation for that? Why did he not have insurance?
It was the ex-wife's fault. He was going through a divorce. He married a Christian girl. She converted to Islam, and then he dumped her and went off with someone else's wife.
Right. Okay.
And so he was going through a divorce. Their marriage was breaking down. And he said it was some confusion over that. But he was driving a car from which he had no insurance, which you would think he might have checked. I know most people who would drive a car before they get in them, they would actually ask themselves the question, am I insured to drive this car? I think if you're transport minister, all the more so. Although kudos to Police Scotland for not covering that one up. That was one of their finer moments.
Okay.
Now he then pushed, and over quite a long part of his career, he pushed the hate crime law. Right. So the hate crime. the hate crime law in Scotland that he was pushing, and the little illustration you see down the bottom is the hate monster. The Scottish government have been through the hate crime law idea about 4 or 5 times, and every time the laughter has been so loud they've kind of sidled off in embarrassed silence. And then 6 months or a year later, they come and they do it again, and it's worse. So this time they thought, we're going to have this thing called the hate monster, right? And everybody took the mickey out of the hate monster. And the hate monster lasted about 3 days, and they had to pull it, right? Because it was laughter. We have certain weapons. One of our weapons is a mobile phone because it's got a camera on it, and you can record what actually happens. State doesn't like that. And the other one, dear David, is laughter, because they can't handle that either. When you're laughing at them, they really don't know what to do.
Yeah.
But the sort of hate crime act that Humza was pushing meant that if you go into your private home and have a conversation around your own dinner table, and you say something that somebody can hear for whatever outside the house, and they think it might be offensive to anybody, they can report that, and the police can come in and interfere with your life because of something you've said in private. So you're not even talking about public speech. You're not even talking about, let alone going aggressively after someone and calling them a name because of the color of his skin or his ethnic origin. Not even that. Just something in your own private home. So it was extremely oppressive. Now, he was challenged on this by a beautiful human being in Scotland called Deke Jackson, who stood against him as an independent candidate in one of the elections. So Deke turned up dressed as basically Adolf Hitler, and doing a Roman salute, but he had a love heart in his hand. And he said, "It's a love salute. We're here to love everybody." Right? And what this was a wind up about the hate crime, to advertise the presence of the hate crime bill as it was then. And he eventually got to speak to Humza, and the interaction was very interesting because Humza was extremely aggressive to the point of threatening. It's the sort of thing that the way someone speaks to you before they glass you in a Glasgow pub. I mean, that was the kind of tone he brought to it. And this is someone who's a sitting MP and minister talking to a guy who's campaigning